What's up YouTube, it's your boy Nash here, welcome back to the channel, and today I have a cubic deck profile for you guys today. Yeah, I never thought I would ever build cubics. So this is kind of interesting because the cubic archetype wasn't released until we got the Bonds Beyond Time movie, not Bonds Beyond Time, the Dark Side of Dimensions movie pack, but there were several cards from that movie that we never got until I think it was like Dual Overload? I think Dual Overload, and it was one of those sets, and the cubics was one of those archetypes where you just had to play it pure. You had to play it pure, otherwise you weren't really playing cubics. And the extra deck that I have is actually really fire. The side deck is just as fire. I can't wait to show you guys this. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this deck profile. If you did, if you enjoyed the deck profile and you guys want to see more deck profiles in the future, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, smash that thumbs up button, and let's get straight into it. So first up, for the cubics. For the cubic monsters, we have 3 copies of Crimson Nova, the Dark Cubic Lord. This is cool because other than Vijam and also Duza, other than those two, each of the cubics has their own way of being summoned. So with Crimson Nova, it says that it cannot be normal summoned or set. It must be special summoned from your hand by revealing 3 cubics. By revealing 3 cubic cards, not monsters, just cards in general, in your hand with different names. So it could be a Duza, it could be a Duza, it could be a cubic Dharma, and cubic Rebirth, and you could just summon this card right off the bat, which is insane. And it cannot be summoned by other ways. Unaffected by other monsters' activated effects, whose original attack is 3,000 or less. So if your opponent were to activate a monster effect where it destroys, Crimson Nova, it's not destroyed, which is just absolutely insane. When this attacking card destroys a monster by battle, you can activate this effect. This card can make a second attack during this battle phase. During your end phase, each player takes 3,000 damage. You can only use this effect once per turn. So not only is this a sort of like a Cyber Dragon of sorts, but it's also its own protection, and it also has the effects of Cyber Twin Dragon, where it can make a second attack, which is just really good. Yes, it is unfortunate that you have to take 3,000 damage, but if you're able to go for game, having life points don't matter. So definitely definitely 3 copies. Plus, it also works out if you summon Crimson Nova Trinity, the Dark Cubic Lord, which I'm going to be talking about that later on once we get to the extra deck. Moving on, we have 3 copies of Duza, the Meteor Cubic Vessel. This is kind of a cool one because this card is normal summonable, and when it's normal or special summon, you can just Foolish Burial one of your cubic cards from your deck to the graveyard right off the bat. So you can go ahead and Foolish Burial a card like, say, Unification of the Cubic Lords, which is basically the polymerization for the deck, send it to the graveyard, and then later on in the match, banish it, summon, and special summon a lower cubic from your deck, ignoring its summoning conditions, and that's it. And it can't be destroyed by battle or card effects during that turn, which is really good. As another effect, Duza has another effect where it says if a monster was sent to the graveyard this turn, while this card was face up on the field, you can make this card gain 200 attack for each monster with a different name in your grave until the end of the turn. So because that Duza has 1,600 attack, you can make it gain, like, say an additional an additional 1,000 as a example, and it would become a 2,600 body on board, which is really good. So this card is basically one of your main combo starters to go into your plays, to go into cards like Crimson Nova, even also cards like FA Don Draxler, Dark Rebellion Exceeds Dragon number 101, or even also some of your link plays, like going into cards like Cerberus, Unicorn, and whatnot, just to name off a couple of examples. Now for the one-ofs, shockingly enough, we have one copy of Inidorya, Doomvault, the Cubic Emperor. This is actually a really cool one because just like with Crimson Nova, this one says that you have to send 3 cubic monsters you control to the grave, and it cannot be summoned by the ways. If summoned this way, this card gains 2,400 attack. So if it's summoned that way, it becomes a 2,400 body on board, and its effect is absolutely nuts because it says if this card is supposed to summon from the hand, inflict 800 damage to your opponent. So it's kind of similar to it's kind of similar to Nathun the Starlight, where when it's summoned, you deal 800 points of damage to your opponent, which is just really busted at that point. If this card in your possession is sent to your grave by your opponent's card by battle or effect, you can target up to 3 cubic monsters in your grave, special summon them, then add a cubic card from your deck or grave to your hand. So not only is that effect a triple Monster Reborn, but it's also it's also either a monster reincarnation or a Stratos, if you will. So it's incredible. It's an incredible effect. Plus, not only that, you can even also use Inidorya and also Duza to go into your rank 4 plays, such as Dark Rebellion Exceeds Dragon number 101, which will help you go into cards like Silent Honor Dark, or even also Dark Requiem Exceeds Dragon, if possible. Next up, we have one copy of Buster Gunniel, the Cubic Behemoth. Not the best card. It's not it's not the greatest card, but it still becomes a 300 attack body if summoned the right way. Where it says you have to send 3 cubic monsters from your field you control to the grave. Cannot be summoned by other ways. If it's summoned this way, it gains 3,000 attack. And this card can make a second and third attack during each battle phase. So it's actually not too bad, but it's not like as broken as Inidorya, because this card is just like, how can I put it? It's kind of like the same as Inidorya, but the only difference is that this card can make a second and third attack during each battle phase. But the only downside is that you'll have to deal with cards like Solemn Strike and whatnot. So you need to have something in your deck to stop it. Which there are only a few cards. So, but yeah. But not only that, this card also is a triple Monster Reborn and also a Stratos / reincarnation. So it's basically the same thing. I believe those two are basically the same thing. Yeah. So to recap, Inidorya gains 2,400 attack and can deal 800 damage. It's a triple Monster Reborn, and you can add a cubic card from your deck or graveyard to your hand. Buster Gunniel allows you to make him gain an additional 2 attacks during each battle phase, and if it's sent to the grave by battle or an opponent's card effect, 3 triple Monster Reborn. So it's not too bad. Not too bad in my opinion, but they're better off at one, because if you put them at like 2 or 3, they're gonna just clog up your whole hand, and it's gonna be a brick. Plus, they can easily flow from the grave back into the deck or back into the hand, depending on how you play the deck. Next up, we have one copy of Vulcan Dragny, the Cubic King. So its effect says, cannot be normal summoned or said, must first be special summoned from your hand by sending 2 cubic monsters you control to the grave. If summoned this way, this card gains 1600 attack. If this card is special summoned from the hand, inflict 800 damage to your opponent. At the end of the damage step, if this card battle, you can target up to 3 V-Jump, the Cubic Seed, in your grave. Send this card to the grave, and you do special summon the V-Jumps. Then you can add 1 Inidorya, Doomvault, the Cubic Emperor, from your deck to your hand. So not only is the effect the same as Inidorya, where you can deal 800 damage. But the big difference is that you can send Vulcan, send Vulcan to the graveyard, special summon the 3 V-Jumps, and you can add Inidorya to your hand, which would allow you to send the V-Jumps back into the graveyard, summon Inidorya, and just attack for game, which is actually not too bad of an effect, in my honest opinion. Next up, we have one copy of Blade Garudia, the Cubic Beast. This is a really cool one because this one in order to summon this card, you need to send 2 cubic monsters you control to the grave. If it's summoned this way, he gains 2000 attack. However, this card can make a second attack during each battle phase, and when it destroys a monster by battle, it's the same thing. You can target up to 3 V-Jumps in your grave, special summon them, send this card to the grave, and add 1 Buster Gunneal from your deck to your hand. Now the next one is basically the same thing. Garudia, the Cubic King. It's the exact same thing. The only thing is that you can send 1 cubic monster you control to the grave. This card gains 800 attack. It deals 800 damage to your opponent, and instead of targeting 3 V-Jumps, you only get to target up to 2 from your graveyard. So summon them, send Guile to the grave, and then add Vulcan Dragny from your deck to your hand. Now we also have as well Dark Garnets, the Cubic Beast. This one is the exact same. 1 cubic monster to summon this card, gains 1000 attack. When it destroys a monster by battle, target 2 V-Jumps in your grave, send this card to the grave, special summon them, then add Blade Garudia from your deck to your hand. So obviously each of the one-ofs has their own effect where they can add the previous one from the deck to the hand, which is not too shabby. Plus they can easily float from the grave back into the deck, or back to the hand, back to the field, however you want it, and you're able to use them to go into your link plays, such as Phoenix, Unicorn, what have you. And then the last of the cubic monsters, we have 3 V-Jump, the Cubic Seed. I don't have to explain what this does, but for those who have never seen or heard of the cubic archetype, it says, cannot be destroyed by battle. At the end of the damage step, if this card battles an opponent's monster, you can place this card face up in your spell and trap zone as a continuous spell. And if you do, place 1 cubic counter on that opponent's monster. Monsters with a cubic counter cannot attack, also negate their effects. So it's kind of like a Fiendish Chain, if you will, which is really crazy. If this card is treated as a continuous spell by this effect, during your main phase, you can spell summon this card from your spell and trap zone. So this is kind of like a Fiendish Chain / Crystal Beast type of deal, which is really insane. Plus it helps you go into cards like Inidorya, Buster Gunneal, Vulcan Dragny, Blade Garudia, Garudia, and of course Dark Garnets as well, which is really good. And not only that, the next card that I'm about to show you guys will actually help you go into these cards, and that is Summoner Monk. I'm actually running only 2 copies only because I didn't have enough room in the main to incorporate 3, but still it's a really cool card. Being able to just go into being able to just go into a Duza right off the bat is just absolutely incredible. Plus it helps you go into your rank into your rank 4 plays, and you can just go all out with that. So it's really cool. And then to round up the monsters, we have 2 copies of Ash Blossom. And Ash Blossom, I don't need to explain. For the spells, we have 3 copies of Cubic Wave. This is a cool one because it says target 1 Cubic monster you control and a face-up monster your opponent controls. The attack of the monster that you control becomes double its current attack, and if it does, the attack of that monster your opponent controls becomes half its current attack. You can banish this card in any number of Cubic monsters from your grave. Then target target face-up monsters you control your opponent controls equal to the amount of those banished Cubic monsters. Place a Cubic counter on each of them, and it's basically a fiendish change. So not only is it a megamorph, if you will, but it's also a fiendish chain right off the bat, which is really good. So three copies, 100% mandatory. Next up, we have two copies of Cubic Dharma. A lot of people are saying that this card is better off as a one-of. I disagree because this card says you take no battle damage from attacks involving your Cubic monsters. So even if you have a V-Jom on the field, and that's the only one you have, you're not taking damage. So what's the point? What's the point of attacking, you know? You know, it's like, what's the point? The other effect says you can only use each of the following effects of Cubic Dharma once per turn during your main phase. You can send 1 Cubic card from your hand to the grave and draw 1 card, or you can banish the card from your grave, then target a Cubic monster in your grave, add it to your hand. So not only is it a protection card for your life points, but it's also a sort of like a one for one, where you send a Cubic card from your hand to the grave to the grave, you get a plus, you know. So it's not too bad. It's not too bad, but the only downside is obviously Ash Blossom. So that's like one of the big deals, one of the big things that they have to deal with. So next up, we have 2 copies of Cubic Karma. There's a big difference between Dharma and Karma. So with Cubic Karma, it says when this card is activated, you can target 1 Cubic monster you control, except V-Jom. Send any number of V-Jom, the Cubic Seed, from your hand and or deck to the grave. Then that monster gains 800 attack for each one, even if this card leaves the field. During your opponent's turn, if V-Jom, the Cubic Seed, is summoned by the effect of a Cubic monster, send this card to the grave, and if you do, half your opponent's life points. You can banish this card from your grave, add a Cubic monster from your deck to your hand. So again, it's basically a card where you can Foolish Burial V-Joms from your deck to your graveyard. One of your Cubic monsters gains 800 attack, and you can send this card to the graveyard and just cut your opponent's life points in half. So if your opponent has, say, 1,000 life points, their life points become 500, and it's over. Your opponent is just dead. Literally, they're just dead. It's just absolutely crazy. Plus, not only that, if you banish the card from your grave, you can just Stratos a Cubic monster from your deck to your hand. In which case, you would normally want to go after, something like Dark Garnix or something like that. But in reality, you want to try and go for Duza so you can send your Cubic cards to the graveyard and use their effects, which is just busted. Next up, we have 3 copies of Foolish Burial Goods, obviously to send your Cubic spells and traps to the graveyard, use their effects, go balls out, plain and simple. And to round out the spells, we have 1 copy of Rank Up Magic Quick chaos. Obviously, because that I'm running Silent Honor Arc in the extra deck, you have to run Silent Honor Dark as well. Basically, with Dark, you're able to just target one of your opponent's monsters that was special summoned, and attach it to Dark as his own material. And if he's destroyed, and sent to the graveyard while it had its materials, you special summon this card, and you gain life points equal to Dark's original attack, which obviously is 2,800. So you're going to be gaining 2,800 each time, but you have to have Silent Honor Arc in your graveyard to activate and resolve the effect. The downside to it, Call by the Grave. That's like one of the biggest deals out there. So you have to find ways to outmaneuver Call by the Grave, which is just nuts. Moving on into the traps, we have a total of 15 traps, crazy enough. So the main deck consists of 19 traps, 3, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 spells, and 15 traps. For the traps, we have 2 copies of Cubic Ascension, which is kind of an interesting one, because it says when an opponent's monster declares an attack, supposed to summon 1 V-Jump the Cubic Seed from your deck, and if you do, change the attack target to it and perform damage cal. If your opponent's life points are at least 2,000 or higher than yours, you can banish the card from your grave, supposed to summon 1 V-Jump the Cubic Seed from your hand deck or graveyard. Then, if only your opponent controlled a monster, when this effect was activated, you can supposed to summon up to 2 more V-Jumps. You can only use this effect once per turn. So not only is this a sort of like a Cyber Dragon of sorts, but it's also an attack guidance armor, if you will. So it changes the attack to another monster, and damage cal is performed. But you can banish this card from your graveyard and summon 3 V-Jumps, which would help you go into your link plays, like Link Karibo, and even also help you go into Dark Garnex, which will help you go up, level up into Inidorya, summon Duza, go for your rank 4 plays. There you go, plain and simple. Next up, we have 3 copies of Unification of the Cubic Lords, which is basically the polymerization for the deck, but its second effect is where really matters, because it says you can banish this card from your grave, so summon a lower 4 or lower cubic monster from your hand or deck, ignoring its summoning conditions. In which case, Dark Garnex would probably be your best bet. You go to Dark Garnex, go into Gary Guile, and then just go up. Keep going up. Plain and simple. Next up, we have 2 copies of Cubic Rebirth, which is basically the Monster Reborn for the deck, where it says when an opponent's monster declares a direct attack, target the attacking monster. Your opponent special summons in attack position as many monsters as possible from their hand, deck, and/or graveyard with the same name as that monster. Also, the attack of the targeted monster and those special summoned monsters become 0 and place 1 cubic counter on each. Monsters with cubic counters cannot attack and their effects are negated. Also, after that, if any cubic counters were placed by this effect, special summon a lower 4 cubic from your hand, ignoring any summoning conditions. So for them, they get to have a Monster Reborn. They get to have a Cyber Dragon, which is unfortunate, but it grants you the power to summon a cubic monster from your hand, ignoring summoning conditions, which obviously you would want to go into Duza, trigger his effect, and then have him gain the additional attack points. That way your opponent won't be able to attack at all, which is really good. Next up, we have 2 copies of Cubic Mandala. Kind of an interesting card. This is kind of an interesting card, because it says if you control a cubic monster, activate this card by targeting any number of monsters that are in your opponent's grave because they were destroyed and sent there this turn. So again, because that they were, so you can So by targeting those cards, by targeting those monsters, you can special summon them to your opponent's field, but each one has 0 attack, and they have a cubic counter on them, in which case they can't attack. It's a Fiendish Chain. While your opponent controls any of the monsters summoned by this effect, negate any monster effects your opponent activates. When the last of these monsters leaves the field, destroy this card. So it's like it's kind of like a reverse. How can I put it? It's like a reverse Call of the Haunted / Fiendish Chain, if you will. Meaning your opponent will the Call of the Haunted part, summon monsters, and it becomes a Fiendish Chain. So this is a really good one. I'm actually tempted to take out the third Foolish Bureau of Goods and put in a third Mandala, because this card is just absolutely busted. This card is just really good. It's good, but it's also interesting as well. So I might do that. And then to round out the Cubic Trap cards, we have Cubic Casualty, which is only a one-of, crazy enough. So it says distribute a number of cubic counters on face-up monsters your opponent controls up to the number of cubic monsters you control. Monsters with cubic counters cannot attack, and their effects are negated, so again, it's another form of Fiendish Chain. You can banish this card from your grave and target a cubic monster you control. This turn, each time it destroys a monster by battle that has a cubic counter, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the original attack of that destroyed monster. You can only use each effect once per turn. I'm actually tempted to also put this at 2 because you're able to just easily deal a good amount of damage. This is like this right here. This card is basically like one of your main win conditions to be able to just go for games. So I'm tempted to put this at 2. I don't know what cards I would take out. Maybe I would take out one of the Cubic Karmas, but yeah, that's actually a really good card. And to round out the traps, we have 3 copies of Waking the Dragon and 2 copies of Solemn Warning. Obviously, Waking the Dragon, you're able to summon pretty much any monster from your main or your extra deck, ignoring all of its summoning conditions. But the thing is, in order to do that, this card must be set and it has to be destroyed by an opponent's card effect. So that is pretty easy at this point. And Solemn Warning is Solemn Warning, basically. For the extra deck, we have Crimson Nova, Crimson Nova Trinity, the Dark Cubic Lord. I think a lot of these are pretty cheap, actually. So, but it requires 3 Crimson Nova, the Dark Cubic Lord, and it says must be fusion summoned with the above materials and cannot be summoned by other ways. Cannot be targeted or destroyed by your opponent's card effects. Broken. That is just broken. When this card declares an attack, half your opponent's life points. Yeah, another way to deal a shitload of damage, basically. When this card destroys a monster by battle, you can activate this effect. This card can make a second attack during each battle phase. If you take effect damage, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the damage you took. So obviously, if you have this card and you bring back Crimson Nova, basically your opponent is going to be dealt up to 6,000 damage. So obviously you're going to be taking 3,000, but your opponent will be taking double the damage, and combo that off with a card like say Cubic Casualty. Yeah, that's quite the deadly combo. Quite the deadly combo for the synchros, and actually for the Waking the Dragon targets. Actually, you have one Beelzes of the Diabolic Dragons. This is a really cool one because this is a Waking the Dragon target, and it says cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. So that right there is just broken on its own, but its other effects where it really gets interesting. Other monsters you control cannot attack. Once per turn, you can target one monster your opponent controls. Any battle damage your opponent takes from attacks involving this card, this turn is halved. Also change that monster's attack to 0, and if you do, gain life points equal to its original attack. So obviously, if you were to combo off, Crimson Nova with Crimson Nova Trinity and this card, you're going to be gaining you'll be losing life points, but your opponent will be dealt even more damage, but you'll be regaining the life points as well, which is really good. Shoutouts to Starbucks. Not sponsored, no copyrights, but shoutouts to Starbucks. Just love their coffee. Next up, we have yet another Waken the Dragon target, and it's Dragosaido's Corrupted Nether Soul Dragon. I've talked about this multiple times in some of my other deck profiles. So it says that it cannot be destroyed by battle, and if he were to destroy an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, it can make a second attack on an opponent's monster in a row during each battle phase. And then during the standby phase, during your standby phase, you can target a face-up monster your opponent controls. Its attack points become half its current attack, and your opponent gets dealt damage equal to the lost attack points, which is just absolutely busted. Next up, we also have F.A. Don Draxler, which is basically a Omni Negate. So obviously it gains attack points equal to its level times 300. So because it's a level 7, that's literally 2100 attack. And if this card attacks a defense monster, obviously it gains the Mad Sword Beast effect, where it inflicts piercing damage. And each time a FA spell or trap or effect is activated, you can increase this card's level by 1. But that really doesn't matter, because your opponent I highly doubt you'll ever walk into a match where you'll play against a bunch of FA monsters, a bunch of FA spells or traps or whatever. But if you do, that could be useful, because this effect is where it really gets going. Because once per turn, when your opponent activates a spell, trap, or effect as a quick effect, you can reduce this card's level by 2 and negate the activation and destroy. So it's like a Solemn Judgment of sorts, which is really cool. Moving on into the Xyz monsters, we have one copy of Divine Arsenal AA Zeus Sky Thunder. This is getting reprinted in the tins, which has been confirmed. Access code target was not in the tin, so we'll probably get that one banned. But this is basically a Nibiru for the deck, and I'm actually running 3 copies of Nibiru in the side, actually, which is funny. But what's cool about this is that I'm actually running number 38 Hope Harbinger Dragon Titanic Galaxy and Cyber Dragon Infinity, because that both of them will grant you the power to gain grant them the power to gain more Xyz materials. The more Xyz materials you have, the more chance, the more times you'll be able to use Zeus's effect to just destroy all cards that your opponent has on the field, including yours, which you really don't want to see. You don't want to see your V-Joms gets into the grave. So that's why you have to have no cards in the back row. No cards, none. Just this. Just Zeus. That's it. That is it. Next up, we have Super Dreadnought Rail Cannon Gustav Max, obviously for the power to end games, of course. Number 38, I talked about it before. Any spell or effect that's activated, it gets negated and it gets attached to Hope Harbinger. Dark Requiem Xyz Dragon. So if you summon Dark Rebellion Xyz Dragon, you can just evolve it right off the bat into Dark Requiem, and it has a pretty decent effect. So it says if this card has Dark Rebellion Xyz Dragon as a material, it gains these effects. Once per turn, you can detach one material from this card that target a face-up monster your opponent controls, change its attack to 0, and if you do, this card gains attack equal to that monster's original attack. So it has an effect similar to Dark Rebellion, but instead of losing, but instead of gaining half the attack, it just gains all of it, basically. And then the second effect says, when your opponent activates a monster effect as a quick effect, you can detach a material from this card, negate the activation, and destroy it. Then you can summon an Xyz monster from your grave, which obviously you would want to summon Infinity if you have it in the graveyard right off the bat. So it's a pretty decent effect, really good. Plus it's a 3000 body on board, so you can't go wrong with that. Next up, we have Cyber Dragon Infinity, a really good Omni negate, and again, it's another really good Waking the Dragon target. So you don't need you don't need Cyber Dragon Nova to summon Infinity. Plain and simple. And then to round up the Xyz monsters, we have the Silent Honor package. We have Silent Honor Arc and Silent Honor Dark, and then also the Dark Rebellion. I already explained it earlier. No need to explain. And for the links, there are only 3 links in the extra egg: one Unicorn, 1 Phoenix, and 1 Link Karibo. For the side deck, this is just my preference. Obviously, you guys can have your own preference when it comes to side decks, but this is what I chose to play for the side. First off, we have 3 copies of Nibiru. Basically, it's Zeus. No need to explain what it does. Next up, we have 3 copies of Ghost Mourner and Moonlit Chill. This is a cool one because it says if your opponent spells summon a monster or monsters face up except during the damage step, you can discard this card to target one of those face-up monsters, negate the effects until the end of the turn. Also, that face-up monster, if that face-up monster leaves the field this turn, its controller takes damage equal to its original attack. So, if your opponent has 2,000 life points and they summon a monster that has more than 2,000, you play this card, send it to the grave. They're pretty much just dead. They're pretty much just dead because they'll have no choice but to send it to the graveyard, and they'll end up losing the they'll be taking that damage, which is just nutty, absolutely insane. Next up, we have the 1 Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. I know that Team Samurai, big shout out by the way, did a video earlier this week saying that he believes that Red Eyes Dark Dragoon is gonna get banned. I don't think so. I think Verde Anaconda is gonna get banned. I think I talked about it in my prediction video this past weekend, but I think in my opinion, Verde and Anaconda must get banned hands down. No need to explain why. We all know what it does. Next up, we have the 1 Called by the Grave. Obviously, you want to make sure that your plays go through. So definitely have this at the ready. 3 copies of Twin Twister. No need to explain what that does. This is really good. 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence, and then the 3rd Solemn Warning in case if things go really bad. So yeah, this is a really awesome deck. I think a lot of these are fairly cheap to get. I might have to get them. As far as the main deck goes. I know that the extra deck is going to be pretty expensive. The side deck is going to be pretty expensive, but still it's pretty good. I might have to get them, actually. But guys, that is going to do it for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure you guys smash that thumbs up button. If you guys are new to the channel, you guys want to see more deck profiles in the foreseeable future, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you guys do not miss out on any new content that comes your way. And be sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram. All the links will be down in the description below. And if you guys have fan mail that you want to send me and want me to open up on the channel, my address will also be in the description as well. And on that, this is your boy Nash, signing out.